all of it having an impact on the guy on trial. Our new reporting from sources that Donald Trump was fuming as he watched his lawyers represent him, doing something he's himself yet to do, conceding he lost the election. Coming up, what we're hearing from those close to the president, a new reaction from one of his closest supporters. Good morning. I'm Hallie Jackson in Washington, along with my colleagues Stephanie Ruhle and Katie Tur, who are joining us here this week, not far from the Capitol, where all these proceedings are going down. Our special coverage here on MSNBC of that second impeachment trial. So here's what we are watching. Less than 2 hours to go for the start of day two. Noon Eastern. You know that time. That is when the House impeachment managers will begin to make their case in the chamber. And as we mentioned, we've just learned we'll be seeing for the first time some of what's described as the Capitol security footage from January 6th. Both sides will have up to 16 hours over 2 days to present their cases. We actually don't expect either side at this point to take that full time. We're also looking to see if there's going to be a shift in the defense strategy after yesterday's presentation from Trump lawyer Bruce Castor. That was the one that was panned by a bunch of Republicans and left the former president fuming, according to our sources. Stephanie, Katie. This new information here from the House impeachment managers, the aides to those managers, is really interesting because while they're saying, hey, yesterday was dry, today we're going to bring it, boy, tough to find, I think, even people that are Republican that thought yesterday was dry. Even the former president's own defense attorney didn't call it dry.
No, he said it was so well done, in fact, that they had to change their game plan. Yeah, the security footage, it's going to be a different view. We haven't seen it. I'm wondering if this is the extent of what they have that is new. I know there's been some talk. We had a senator on the other day, Blumenthal, saying that he thinks it's maybe about what Donald Trump was doing inside the White House. We just spoke to Senator Gillibrand, who said that that could be something that could convince Republicans. Do they have any more information on that beyond what has already been publicly reported? The security footage alone, yes, the video has been so compelling, and you made the good point earlier that it's causing a lot of PTSD for a lot of people who were there, and the American public, if they were watching it, you know, couldn't help but be compelled by it. But is it going to be enough to sway the Republicans who have already made up their mind?
Well, enough to sway the Republicans to link President Trump, former President Trump, directly to those riots. We have seen in the last week the former president's team try to isolate them like, you know, a few bad actors. If we see today more of a connection, to your point, what President Trump was doing and his family, you know, I said it before, remember, his first video after the insurrection, he said, "We love you." Remember, you saw the Trump family dancing backstage, Ivanka Trump calling these people patriots, people who beat a Capitol Police officer to death.
Worth noting, of course, that video, I think, was from before the actual insurrection happened during the president's speech on the Ellipse. It's a good point, Steph. Let me bring in now for some of this new reporting. NBC reporters Leanne Caldwell, who is on Capitol Hill, Monica Alba is covering the former president in West Palm Beach. We're also joined by MSNBC impeachment analyst Daniel Goldman, who served as the majority counsel in Donald Trump's first impeachment. Leanne, I know that you have some new reporting, not just on what we're hearing from the impeachment managers team, but I think you've been talking to some Republican members, too. Bring us up to speed on what you're hearing.
So, Hallie, that's right. Let's start with the impeachment managers. Today is their day, not to talk about the constitutionality, which they called that part of their presentation yesterday dry. Today, they're going to talk about the merits of the president's role in inciting an insurrection. They say that they are going to bring the goods, and they also say that they're going to have new evidence in the form of video from Capitol security, something that the public has never seen before. So it could be another really gripping day on the Senate floor by these impeachment managers. As far as the Trump defense team, however, I just spoke with one of his biggest defenders, who's not part of his Trump defense team, but a big defender in Congress, Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio. And he defended the defense team's performance last night and said that the president has no culpability here. Let's take a listen.
There was a key line that the president said in his speech that wasn't in the video that the Democrats put on, and that was peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. So I think the defense team got that across, and I think that's the key point here. This thing is not constitutional. There was no due process on the House side at all, and the facts support the president in that he did not incite any type of breach of the Capitol whatsoever.
So I also asked Representative Jordan if the president should have had different behavior leading up to January 6th after the election. I asked him multiple times. He refused to answer that question. Either way, he didn't defend the president and he didn't condemn the president. So it was very telling. But he is trying to defend him in this impeachment trial, saying that, in fact, what the president did was not impeachable, that he did nothing wrong. Meanwhile, the Trump defense has a very captive audience, especially of Republicans who are going to decide if they are going to convict or acquit the president. They were not pleased with the Trump defense performance yesterday. Some of the quotes we heard from Republicans is that it was puzzling, not effective, and terrible. Today we're going to hear just from the impeachment managers, and so the defense team has a couple days to figure out what their argument is going to be and try to make a much more impressive presentation.
Monica, Senate Republicans weren't the only ones who were displeased with President Trump's defense team's presentation. You've got reporting that Trump himself didn't like it. So what's he going to do about it?
Yeah, the critical audience of one, Steph, was very disappointed, in particular with Bruce Castor's meandering performance. But he also, we're told, wasn't thrilled with David Schoen's part of the presentation either. We're told that the former president was watching this from Mar-a-Lago, where he was fuming and expressed his displeasure to aides and allies, asking questions about why they changed strategy and why they would praise the House impeachment manager's case. You saw there Bruce Castor even saying, we changed the plan, in effect, because we were so blown away by what they brought to the table in their opening remarks. So you can only imagine how frustrated and upset Donald Trump here is in South Florida. And he hasn't even been able to express this publicly. We haven't seen any press releases from his official office or any appearances either on television networks or social media since, of course, he's been removed from those. So the big question now, as this group attempts to regroup and redefine their strategy, do they shift the order again? Are the arguments going to shift in any way? Because it wasn't just the substance that Donald Trump didn't like, it was the style in particular. And you had David Schoen trying to explain overnight on Fox News that they changed the strategy and it was a game-time decision. Bruce Castor did not respond to the widespread criticism when he was asked by NBC News why he made that shift, instead arguing that he was trying to present a more clear and deliberative strategy when really what we saw unfold there was anything but. So as they try to today watch the House impeachment managers, I'm told the former president is in daily contact with his team, even though he's not happy with them, expressing that, but he doesn't have much recourse here either. It's not like he can now bring in a new team. And remember, the other two lawyers who we haven't heard from yet, Michael Vanderveen and Julianne Bateman, they haven't had a speaking role so far. They were just added to the team on Monday, guys, 48 hours ago. And this is, of course, after the original attorneys who were hired to represent the former president decided they needed to head for the exits because they were not comfortable with the former president's desire to use bogus and unsubstantiated claims of voter fraud, which, by the way, have not been included or mentioned at all in any of the pretrial brief memos so far.
Daniel, let's talk about what the Democrats are going to be trying to do today. The Republicans, part of the defense has been that you can't link the president's words with what happened at the Capitol. The Democrats say, no, you clearly can. What do they need to show that link between the president calling the election rigged and saying that it's going to be wild and you got to fight, 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 and what happened on Capitol Hill?
So what we're going to see today, I think, is the best compilation of evidence that we've seen yet. A very thorough and effective job of weaving the president's comments, tweets, statements, his surrogate statements, as well as, I would assume, social media messages from some of his followers who ultimately went to January 6th. We're going to learn about the planning of this protest on January 6th, which is directly linked to Donald Trump. So what we're going to take a wider lens. I think yesterday really focused effectively on the riots themselves to put everyone back in that emotional framework that we were all in watching and they were all in present in the Capitol itself in terms of the senators on January 6th. But we're going to start from the beginning, and I would assume we start from even before the election, where he planted the seed that the election was rigged. And then we're going to move all the way from November up through January 6th, and where they're going to tell a story where Donald Trump is going to be the central character who's orchestrating this entire effort to overthrow the election and that riot or that protest, which turned into a riot on January 6th. After today, there is, I would assume, going to be no way to de-link Donald Trump from what happened on January 6th. And if the president is upset about what he saw yesterday, he's going to be real upset today because his lawyers are not going to have an opportunity to say anything. So it's going to be all House managers all day long today with incredibly compelling evidence that they have. They showed some of it yesterday. We'll see more of it today. But they're going to weave a story today much more than what we saw yesterday in that powerful 13-minute video.
Of course, when you talk about the defense team, I'm told by one of my sources the president wasn't thrilled at all with Bruce Castor. Wasn't a huge fan of David Schoen's presentation either. Steph.
Are we going to see the arc of what happened from Election Day until insurrection, or do you think we could be getting new information, more ties around who organized this event, who financed it? There have been questions a couple weeks ago from Congresspeople who said the day before the insurrection, they were concerned that some sitting members of Congress may have been giving tours laying out a roadmap for those who were rioters the following day. Could we be getting more information around any of this?
It's possible, but I doubt it. I mean, the focus of this trial is Donald Trump's role. It's not intended to be a full accounting of everything that occurred on January 6th. That will have to happen in some other congressional hearing or some other commission, some other way. That's not what this is about. And so I think we will see the full arc of Donald Trump's role in this. But I do not think that they will spend a lot of time on some of the peripheral characters' involvement in this, nor should they. This is the trial against Donald Trump and what they want to do. And I think, by the way, everyone wants to see new evidence, new evidence, new evidence. But just keep an open mind. We've seen a lot of bits and pieces of the evidence, but we haven't seen it coherently put together in a effective timeline. And that's what we're going to see. And it's going to feel new, even if it isn't new.
Daniel Goldman, thank you for your perspective. Leon Caldwell, Monica Alba, thank you for your great reporting. We appreciate it. Next up, we have live a member of Donald Trump's legal team during his first impeachment trial. A guy you might recognize from last year. Robert Ray will join us with more on Bruce Castor's opening statement. This morning, former President Trump's defense team on another kind of defense, trying to explain how comments like the one you're about to see from Bruce Castor defined their first day of presentations.
We still know what records are, right? On the thing you put the needle down on and you play it. I worked in this building 40 years ago. I got lost then, and I still do. Representative so-and-so seeks to walk back comments about, I forget what it was. Nebraska, you're going to hear, is quite a judicial thinking place. I'll be quite frank with you. We changed what we were going to do on account that we thought that the House manager's presentation was well done.
Castor perhaps stating the obvious there in the eyes of many, with his fellow defense team lawyer David Schoen later saying, yeah, Castor had not planned on going at that point. He said that Castor, he believes, and the rest of the team should be more well prepared in the future. Let me bring in now somebody who knows what it's like to be in those shoes, Robert Ray, a member of former President Trump's defense team during his first impeachment trial. Mr. Ray, good morning. Thanks for being on the show again.
Good morning.
So what did you think of Bruce Castor's arguments? Could you have done better? And why aren't you there defending the former president again this time?
Look, it's never a good day when your audience, which is obviously the audience of 100 senators, focuses on your presentation as opposed to the merit of the president, the former president's position. But, let's get to the bottom line here. The bottom line is that there were 44 senators who have a constitutional problem with this impeachment. And unless something substantial changes, obviously one more vote than they had the last time when this motion came up by Rand Paul, it is not going to change the result, and former President Trump will be acquitted by the Senate. So I think the point is, as far as presentation and with a view toward, the continuation of this trial, if you've tried enough cases like I have, there are good days and bad days in every trial. You move forward and you try to do better. That's all you can do, and you don't overreact to what happens in any given day. There's a substantial defense here that needs to be presented, and I think you'll hear more from the defense when it's its turn to talk about the fact that there's not going to ever be proof unless something new is actually presented. And Dan Goldman suggested that, if it's not going to be actually new evidence, it'll feel like new evidence. If that's the best that the Democrats have, that's not going to be enough to prove a case under the insurrection statute. And on that basis alone, consistent with the First Amendment, I don't believe that you will have Republican support for a conviction.
Let me just follow up on that here, because this performance issue from Bruce Castor has raised some questions about the former president's legal defense team in whole. We know that one member of that team, Michael Van der Veen, actually sued the former president last year for making false claims of vote-in mail fraud, for example. Is it that hard to find somebody to defend Donald Trump? And I didn't hear an answer to my question before. Were you asked to step in again this time, considering that you were part of the team last time?
I can't answer that question because that's privileged, as you know. I don't have any current plans to be in Washington over the next couple of weeks, if that gives you an answer to your question, and that's the most that I can say. But again, I understand the inside baseball need to want to talk about how the lawyers performed. Ultimately, though, this is about the former president and the merits of his case. And right now, nothing substantial has changed. There are 44 votes, clearly, since they didn't think it's constitutional to begin with, that is not likely to change. And if it doesn't change, the former president will, in fact, be acquitted. I also don't think that you should expect to see any appetite by either side for live witnesses, which means that essentially what we're going to have here, somewhat similar to the last impeachment, is trial by video. And again, Chuck Schumer promised new evidence. So far, I haven't seen or heard it. I'll be looking to see whether the House managers present new evidence beginning today. It sounds like, today is their big day. So let's see what they have.
Can you explain how whether you were asked to defend the president is privileged? Does that mean that you're currently working with the president? You're currently hired as one of his attorneys?
Doesn't matter whether I'm currently his counsel or formerly his counsel. I owe a duty of loyalty to the former president, which I am going to abide by. And I don't comment on conversations or discussions with regard to a representation, whether one is in existence or one is planned for the future. That's privileged information.
It's not privileged information. This is not about agree or disagree. It's not privileged information. What the three of us are asking you is, are you currently representing the former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump?
And I gave you my answer. My answer is I have no plans to be in Washington for the next 2 weeks. So there you go.
That's not answering the question. You don't need to be in Washington to be representing the president.
You don't have to like the answer, okay? I don't have any plans to be in Washington with regard to this impeachment trial, period.
And Ms. Wright, it's not about whether we like the answer or not, and we wanted to have you on because we thought your perspective was interesting. Just seems like kind of one of those questions, that would be answered with a yes or a no. It is rather notable. I think you might agree that you're not giving us that answer.
No, I am not currently before the United States Senate, so that's the answer.
Let me ask you a question. You seem to be arguing that it doesn't matter what the defense team says. They don't have to say anything, that this case is already closed, that the Republicans already don't think. So what's the point of even coming out and defending the president?
The burden of proof is on the House managers. As any criminal trial reflects, the defendant has no burden of proof at all. The president doesn't have to show up with a defense or a defense team. The House managers have to carry their burden. At the moment, I have not heard any evidence, which is what is required based on what they charge. In the sole article of impeachment, they have charged incitement to insurrection. Under the First Amendment and the insurrection statute, it requires proof that the president, the former president, then president, had a direct call for violent action. Until such evidence is presented, he has First Amendment immunity from prosecution. And if you can't show that a high crime or misdemeanor has been committed, it seems to me that the Republicans have a well-founded basis to acquit him on that standard alone. So that's going to be, it seems to me, that's going to be what the Republicans will be looking for. Look, I prefer to keep an open mind as well, as the senators should, but until the House managers present evidence of the president's direct call for lawless or violent action, he cannot be convicted. And I suggest to you, if this were a criminal case, most judges would not even allow a case like this to go before a jury because no rational jury could convict.
But of course, it's not a criminal case, so that's irrelevant.
Robert Ray, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your perspective. We are straight up out of time, sir. I'm so sorry. We're literally at the end of the show. Robert Ray, thank you again.
Go ahead.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Sorry, there's a bit of a delay, I think, in our feeds as well, but we do appreciate your perspective. We actually are out at the end of the show, and Chuck and Andrea and Craig are probably going to kill us, so one sentence each before we go.
Stephanie's right. It's not a criminal trial. It's a different standard.
And he didn't answer the question. It doesn't matter whether he's in Washington or Mar-a-Lago or presenting before the Senate. He did not answer whether or not he's representing the president.
Steph, Katie, thank you, and thank you all for being with us. Chuck Todd, Andrew Mitchell, Craig Melvin are going to be picking it up after probably a shorter break. See you tomorrow.
Welcome back to MSNBC's special coverage of the second impeachment trial of former President Donald John Trump. I'm Chuck Todd, alongside my co-anchors this morning, Andrea Mitchell and Craig Melvin. We are just about 90 minutes from the start of the official opening arguments of this impeachment trial, as the House managers will begin making their case that the former president incited a deadly insurrection on January 6th. And we just learned that impeachment managers plan to introduce new evidence today of never-before-seen security footage from the Capitol attack.
And, of course, this comes after the trial kicked off yesterday with the dramatic, chilling 13-minute video montage of the brutal insurrection, intercut with a timeline of the president's continuing praise for the rioters. The Senate later voting to affirm the constitutionality of the trial, but despite the impact of the Democrats' video, only one more Republican senator joined the handful who had previously voted that the trial is constitutional. That vote revealing just how strong President Trump's grip remains on Senate Republicans.
6 of the chamber's 50 Republicans voted with Democrats to say, yes, this impeachment trial is constitutional, but far more Republicans, including Senator Bill Cassidy, acknowledged that the House managers did a better job than the defense. Sources telling NBC News that former President Trump is extremely displeased with his legal team's performance on Tuesday, Chuck.
Well, look, in a moment, we're going to speak with the number 2 Democrat in the Senate, Dick Durbin. But first, guys, let's talk about where this trial and our democracy goes from here. You know, Craig, you just brought up the Bill Cassidy. Let's play that Bill Cassidy sound here, because in some ways he said into words what we were all thinking as we watched yesterday unfold. Let's take a listen.
President Trump's team were disorganized. They did everything they could but to talk about the question at hand. And when they talked about it, they kind of glided over it, almost as if they were embarrassed of their arguments. If I'm an impartial juror and I'm trying to make a decision based upon the facts as presented on this issue, then the House managers did a much better job.
Andrew Mitchell, all of that got them one more vote.
One more vote.
Far short of the 17 they're looking for.
And it's daunting, but we are told, again, that they have even more dramatic video today. And that's because even though we saw some new video we had not seen before, and certainly the audio and the profanity and the repeated comments, you know, Trump told us to come here and all of the rest were so impactful, you didn't really focus on that before in television coverage. But now this is the security video, and I think you're going to see this now from the police perspective of how the Capitol police officers and Metropolitan Police coming to their aid were attacked, were hammered, and the things that were said to them. That is going to be, I think, very important, unless, of course, these Republican senators have their minds made up.
Yeah, you know, it's Chuck, it really is, you know, yesterday, I don't know who had a worse day, Bruce Castor or that cat lawyer. down in Texas.
Yeah, I know, the cat lawyer.
It really did seem as if at times that they called him at 8 or 9 and they said, hey, you want to defend the former president of the United States? Come on over to the Capitol. And if you do, and stand up and start talking. It was striking how underprepared they seemed from the beginning. I know there's been some reporting about, changing their strategy based on what they heard from the House managers, but still, it was striking. What's also been striking, Chuck, if you look at the comments that some of the senators made in the days and weeks after that attack, and I think we've got a full screen to remind folks what some of them said. The Senate, now Minority Leader, then Majority Leader Mitch McConnell on January 19th, the mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people. Senator Richard Burr, the Republican from the Tar Heel state, the president bears responsibility for today's events. And even Ted Cruz in the days and weeks after. I do think the president's rhetoric and his language has been over the line. I think he needs to recognize it. It's striking to hear some of what we've heard over the last day or two from Senate Republicans, right, and you contrast it with what we heard in January. It really is bizarre.
Well, and let's take it to one individual senator, Mitch McConnell.
Right.
And I think we're all trying to figure out, where is Mitch McConnell on all this? In fact, we've made a timeline to show you if you're as confused where he is. So on January 12th, McConnell goes and essentially floats a trial balloon with the New York Times, reporting he backs impeachment, and he's sort of sending a signal, clearly a trial balloon. The next day, the 13th, though, McConnell rejects a speedy Senate trial for Trump after the impeachment, which has, of course, been one of the arguments. Then on January 26th, McConnell signals support for the effort to deem Trump the impeachment trial unconstitutional. He votes that it's unconstitutional. Yesterday, McConnell again said it was unconstitutional, and then last night an aide to McConnell apparently sent word to Bloomberg, no, this is a vote of conscience, which is Washington speak for he's not whipping it, and he's not going to hold it against any Republican for voting to convict. But Andrea, here's what it looks like to me. Looks like he put up the trial balloon. He wants to get rid of Trump. He thinks it's bad for the party to have Trump. He blames Trump for the Georgia losses. He puts up that trial balloon, and essentially the Trump base annihilates that trial balloon, and he is backing off.
The only caveat I would have is that look at the way his wife, Elaine Chao, resigned from the cabinet.
It's true.
Immediately. I mean, there are signals there. This is profoundly disturbing to them, I believe. That is based on also some reporting that I have. And we don't know which way he's going to go. The question now is, will anyone follow? And is he prepared to, having the protection of just having been reelected, and he's got 6 years to live through this, is he prepared to go his own way at some point? And, just where is the caucus going to be? But yesterday was really quite a big tell.
Yep, that's for sure.
And so joining us now is Eugene Robinson, columnist for the Washington Post and an MSNBC political analyst, Michael Steele, former advisor to Jeb Bush and John Boehner, and currently a spokesman for Dominion Voting Systems, and Melissa Murray, professor at NYU Law School and also an MSNBC contributor. First, to just pick up on the Mitch McConnell theme of Michael Steele, what is your read of all of these mixed signals from Mitch McConnell and where he might be headed?
My old boss, Speaker Boehner, said that a leader without followers is just a man taking a walk. I think Mitch McConnell wants the president not to be a factor going into the 2022 elections. This is not just about the past, right? This is not just about losing the Georgia Senate seats and the majority along with them. He's going to have open seats in 2022, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio. Those are not states where a Trump-backed GOP candidate is your best candidate in the general election. So if there is a way to convince the center-right group in the GOP caucus, the Senate caucus, to come with him, I think that Senator McConnell would like to reduce the former president's influence going forward. The question is whether he can do that.
Eugene Robinson, you've watched this town a long time, and it has been interesting to, see so many Republican senators yesterday admit that the president's team did a poor job, but they couldn't do what Bill Cassidy did and treat it as sort of a, not a political spectacle. He treated it as sort of moot court. Okay, which side made the case?
Right, he did. I mean, he approached it like a juror with who was supposed to have an open mind and listen to the arguments. It's notable to me that he didn't say it was the powerful video that convinced him on this issue. He actually listened to the arguments and he did not hear the president's lawyers making a coherent case, and he heard the Democratic House managers make a compelling case. I thought Joe Neguse, in particular, the way he sort of gave the historical rationale for deeming this constitutional and proper and necessary, I thought did just a terrific job. That's kind of hard to argue with, and again, the president's lawyers didn't even try to argue the case. But if argument it didn't sway more than one Republican today, I wonder what will. It certainly wasn't the video, it wasn't the emotion, and argument only got one. So it's hard to imagine it's going to get a whole lot more. But we'll see.
Melissa, Democrats, to Eugene's point, that video, that 13-minute video from January 6th, showing the insurrection, showing the riot, showing the damage, interspersed with the president's own words before and after the riot. They've said, the House managers have said that today is going to be dry. Or excuse me, yesterday is going to be dry compared to what we see today. Is it going to cut through? How do they cut through? I mean, are these presentations making it harder for Republicans to stick with the former president?
Well, I'm not sure that it's making it harder for the Republican senators to stay with the former president, but I do think it may have some penetration with the American public. And we have to remember that impeachment is at once a legal proceeding and political theater to some degree. So, yes, they are making a case to these jurors who are also senators, but they're also making the case to the American people, because if they're not successful in convicting this president and disqualifying him from future office, they at least want to make the case to the public that he is not fit to serve in any capacity going forward. And I think that was part of what that video montage was trying to do yesterday.
And also, we saw only one Republican change his mind from last time the Senate voted, as we pointed out. It was Bill Cassidy, as we just played. The Louisiana Party, the Republican Party, moved to rebuke Cassidy. Their statement says in part, quote, "The Republican Party of Louisiana is profoundly disappointed by Senator Bill Cassidy's vote on the constitutionality of the impeachment trial now underway against former President, now private citizen Donald J. Trump. We feel that an impeachment trial of a private citizen is not only an unconstitutional act, but also an attack on the very foundation of American democracy, which will have far-reaching and unforeseen consequences for our republic." Wow, you know, that's a very strong statement. Is that the knife hanging over Republican senators, Michael Steele?
Well, I do think that the strength of the president's support with the grassroots, the base of the Republican Party, remains strong. And there's no question that after 4 years with the president, former President Trump, as the head of the Republican Party, the institutions of the party are still strongly with him. I do think that there is some room to grow still here. I do think that there are some retiring senators. I think there are some senators who recently won their reelection. If they decide to get there, they can get there. But it looks very, very unlikely right now.
The dog disagrees with you, Michael. The dog clearly disagrees with your analysis.
Well, as they say, that dog don't howl. There's got to be some really bad cliche we could use here. I got two Carolina boys here between Craig and Michael Steele. One of you's got to be a good dog metaphor. And Eugene, right? Yeah, we're surrounded by the Carolinas here. Eugene, you know, yesterday was, when you look at that vote, as you pointed out, it persuaded one. But you heard Mitch McConnell, or maybe it was Josh Holmes or another aide to Mitch McConnell telling Bloomberg, hey, he's got an open mind here. Jamie Raskin is saying, oh, no, there's open minds. I think, you know, he's got to be sunny about this. But you seem like you've given up, thinking that there's a persuadable, there's persuadables left. Why is that?
You know, as Reverend Jackson always says, keep hope alive. So I don't think one gives up, and I know the House managers will not give up. But I'm just trying to slaughter in terms of legal argument, right? I mean, if there were a mercy rule, they just would have taken, just ended it after a half hour early. Yet it moved one. Maybe the managers can present evidence that will convince some more. But look, every time a prominent Republican senator or House member comes out for impeachment or against the president in some way, they get rebuked and censured and punished by their state Republican Party. So it's clear the grassroots is riled up on the president's side about this, and I just don't know if they're going to fight that.
No, and I'll tell you what the Louisiana Republican Party did. I mean, I joked, it's a veiled threat without the veil. This is a real change. In the last 20 years, state parties wouldn't do this to their own senators like this. They gave their own senators, particularly if they weren't in cycle, the benefit of the doubt on all sorts of points. This pandemic's not easy on dogs, so we're not going to punish your dog there, Michael. It's been tough on the dogs. I know mine are rough sometimes when the video's on, too. Anyway, Eugene Robinson, Michael Steele, and Melissa Murray, thank you all. We will check back with you later in this hour. Coming up, what senators are watching for in today's opening arguments? We're going to talk with Illinois Senator Dick Durbin. He's the chair of the Judiciary Committee. He joins us ahead. He's the number 2 in the Senate on the Democratic side. Our special coverage of the second impeachment trial of Donald John Trump. Only on MSNBC.
Some breaking news out of Georgia on this Wednesday morning. NBC News has confirmed that Fulton County prosecutors have started a criminal investigation into former President Trump's efforts to overturn the state's election results there. That includes that infamous phone call that the former president made to Georgia's Secretary of State telling him to, quote, find votes to change the result. That's just coming in now. NBC News confirming that there is a criminal investigation underway in Georgia. That means that the former president is now under investigation in 2 states, Georgia and New York. Meanwhile, as we watch the Hill, today the House impeachment managers will start to make their case, try to accomplish what may be an impossible task, convincing 17 Republican senators to convict the most popular figure in their party right now. Illinois Democratic Senator Dick Durbin chairs the Judiciary Committee. He joins us now. Senator Durbin, we saw that compelling 13-minute video yesterday using the president's own words. There was that emotional plea made by Congressman Raskin from Maryland. And at the end of all of it, just one lone Republican changing their mind on the question of constitutionality. How deflating was that for you?
Well, it was disappointing, but it wasn't surprising. We're dealing with Republican members of the Senate, most of them, who are sticking with Donald Trump either out of loyalty or political fear. And it's a shame. Some of them, this president has attacked them personally. He's attacked their families. He said things about them that are just clearly outrageous, and still they march in lockstep behind him. And when it comes to the fear of the local parties, we saw what happened to Bill Cassidy yesterday. He said the obvious. The president's defense attorneys did not make the case, and that's why he voted to go forward. And what happened in the state of Louisiana, his Republican Party turned on him for that kind of audacity and I might say courage.
Senator Durbin, I believe you are in your 25th year in the United States Senate, which means you have served with Mitch McConnell for that long. I'm going to guess that while you might speak or at least understand the language of McConnell. So explain what you think the signal Mitch McConnell is sending with those blind quotes in Bloomberg last night.
I just think he's in an impossible political situation, because what's happening is the core of the Republican Party has been shaken by this militia movement, this QAnon movement, this white supremacist movement that is becoming an integral part of the Republican Party of America. And you're seeing it, New York Times reported this morning, you're seeing registrations across America where Republicans are walking away saying, this isn't the party I signed up for. Mitch McConnell is trying to figure out what the party post-Trump looks like, or whether it's going to be the Trump party forever. It's a terrible dilemma.
Senator, you said last night that you had spent some time with Officer Sitnick's parents after the service last week. and how profoundly moved all of you there are by what happened to him and other members of the Capitol Police Force. They're going to show video today, we understand, from the perspective of the police, the security films. If that does not persuade your Republican colleagues, one wonders what will. And how do they vote after voting that they don't even think a trial is constitutional? How do they then justify voting to convict down the road, no matter what the testimony is?
This is a man, Officer Sicknick, who risked his life for me and for every senator who sits in that chamber, and they know it. And he gave his life in service to the country and in service to us in Congress. And if that isn't a compelling fact, when I faced his parents, I just couldn't imagine. It is the worst possible grief to lose a child. And in this case, a man who lost his life in defense of this building, this Congress, this nation. For those Republicans, and there's one in Michigan, the Republican Senate leader, who says that this January 6th was all a hoax. It really had nothing to do with Donald Trump. Well, let me tell you, the reality of the situation is this officer gave his life because this murderous mob came into the Capitol at the instigation of this president. That is a fact.
Senator, years ago, I worked there on the Hill for a senator for a couple of months, and one of the things that struck me, no offense here, was oftentimes how little lawmakers seem to be, how little attention lawmakers seem to be paying to whomever was speaking. Yesterday, your colleagues, your Republican colleagues, were they listening? Did you find that they were actually following the proceedings, or did they seem checked out?